Okay, let's start with the Nexus 6 and we'll go with the specs first. The Nexus 6 sports a 5.9-inch 2560 by 1440 QHD AMOLED display that rocks an astounding 493 pixels per inch. Under the hood is a 3220 mAh battery, a 13 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization, and a 2 megapixel front-facing camera. It has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 805 quad-core CPU clocked at 2.5 GHz and comes in 32GB and 64GB options. It also comes packed with 3GB of RAM, support for practically every network on planet Earth, your standard array of sensors, and it runs Android 5.0 Lollipop. A lot of people were skeptical when this was first announced, and really a lot of people still are. The price tag is much higher than the Nexus 5, and there are those who take exception to that. The 6-inch display is also gigantic and is almost too big even for most fans of phablets. The normal-sized phone crowd is very unpleased about that. Even without the device in hand, there are a few educated guesses that we can make. There are very few phones that have over 3000 mAh batteries that have poor battery life. The 1440 display will probably keep it from attaining the kind of battery we saw in devices like the Note 3, but most people should be able to make it through the day with a battery that size. The processor is top of the line, so is the GPU, and so is the operating system. This means that we can expect a nearly flawless performance that results in a very pleasant and pretty much lag-free experience. There will probably be a hiccup occasionally, but overall this should be one of the best performing smartphones of all time. We also know that this is pretty much the same camera that's on the Moto X 2014 edition. Unfortunately, that camera has come with mixed reactions. Some people think it's alright and others think it's pretty bad. A lot of that depends on personal taste though, and we'll definitely know more once the comparisons come out. Finally, we know that the Nexus 6 will cost about $650 and will be available in the Google Play Store, the 4 big US carriers along with US Cellular, and likely a range of carriers from around the world. Next up, let's talk about the Nexus 9, which is arguably the more interesting device. It comes with an 8.9-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 2048 by 1536 pixels that also includes a double tap to wake up feature. It also sports a 1.6 megapixel front-facing camera, an 8 megapixel rear-facing camera, and an astounding 6700 mAh battery. It comes in black, white, and sand colors. Under the hood, it has 2GB of RAM, a 64-bit dual-core Tegra K1 processor clocked at 2.3 GHz, along with its 192-core Kepler GPU. It also comes with HTC's boom sound speakers and comes in 16GB and 32GB options. It also runs Android 5.0 Lollipop. Far fewer people are skeptical about the Nexus 9. It's reasonably priced by pretty much everyone's standards, comes with a reasonable amount of storage by most people's standards, and that 64-bit processor is about as state-of-the-art as you can conceivably get in a mobile device right now. About the only weird thing is the 4:3 aspect ratio, because 16:9 is kind of the standard, but this isn't the first time Google has done this. If you'll recall, the Pixel Chromebook has a 4:3 aspect ratio and Google fans seem to enjoy it, so it may not be that bad of a move. Even without this device, we can make some educated guesses. With that processor, that RAM, and running stock Android Lollipop, we can guess that this is going to be a pretty impressive machine. Some may balk at the idea of a dual-core processor, but do keep in mind that this isn't in the same category as the dual-core processors from 2 years ago. We're relatively certain that this device is going to be a beast. As everybody knows, HTC built the Nexus 9, and with that comes HTC's boom sound. Boom sound has been well regarded since it was first included on the HTC One M7 and continues to be one of the best features on literally every HTC device that has it. The speakers are going to sound awesome compared to most other tablets. Overall, the Nexus 9 seems to be a fairly solid device. It has great specs, HTC's well-regarded build quality, and boom sound, and it'll be running stock Android. When the Nexus program originally started, it was meant to be a benchmark from which all other OEMs could follow to create awesome devices. The Nexus 9, on paper, seems to live up to that status. There are some people that are misled by the fact that Google didn't put out a smaller device this year. Instead, they opted to keep the Nexus 5 around for another year, and that's not entirely a bad thing. The Snapdragon 800 in the Nexus 5 is still a very speedy and efficient processor, and our cursory tests show that it runs Android Lollipop with grace. When you look at the big picture, Google is kind of doing a Samsung strategy here. They have a 5-inch device, a phablet, and then a tablet. In other words, there's pretty much a device out there for everybody right now. If I had to guess, I'd say that we'd probably see a Nexus 5 and 6 refresh next year when 64-bit architecture becomes the standard, but until then, there's really nothing wrong with the Nexus 5, and the Nexus 6 is only a slight step up. Something else to keep in mind here is that there are plenty of options if you want to go with the Nexus and still get Lollipop. Altogether, there will be 7 Nexus devices running Lollipop by Christmas, including the Nexus 4, 5, 6, both 7s, 9, and 10. Since it's been established that you don't need amazing specs to run stock Android really well, that means there will be more up-to-date Nexus devices than ever before, and that's pretty exciting, especially since you can get about half of them used at a very reasonable price. It's literally never been a better time to be a Nexus fan. We'll know more about the Nexus 6 and the Nexus 9 when we get some devices in hand. Like I said earlier, we're kind of in that limbo where the devices have been announced but only a select few people even have them. When they do start getting handed out, you'll want to stay tuned to Android Authority because we'll have a cornucopia of videos for you to watch.